Hello, guys. It's your favorite lawyer again. Today, we'll be talking about access to justice, which we refer to as pro bono. Pro bono is a Latin word which means public good. This means that the concept of pro bono is something that has to do with the good of the public, the good of the populace, the good of the masses. Now, the whole idea and concept of pro bono, it's about giving access or providing access to justice for the public good. So this actually means providing free legal services for people that cannot afford it, because we all know, and as it's a common principle, like that justice delayed is justice denied. So if justice delayed is justice denied, then what if somebody doesn't even have the access to justice in the first place? It's a horrible thing. So the concept and the idea of pro bono is to ensure as much as possible that more people have access to justice. More people have that means to access justice, which is quite fundamental for human living. In Nigeria, the principal act or the principal law legislation that provides for pro bono services is the Legal Aid Council Act. The Legal Aid Council is a parastatal of the government in Nigeria that was set up so as to provide these free legal services to the indigent people. And by virtue of the act, the provision of the act that established the Legal Aid Council, that's the Legal Aid Council at the Legal Aid Act, it is provided that once somebody's salary doesn't exceed the minimum wage, the person is entitled to legal aid under the Legal Aid Act provided by the Legal Aid Council. So this council has lawyers that are under the government employ, just like the Ministry of Justice in Nigeria has lawyers under the government employ, but specifically the Aid Council is specifically dedicated to providing legal services to indigent people, unlike the Ministry of Justice that is the government's lawyer. So every matter involving the government, generally, Ministry of Justice runs that. But the Legal Aid Council is specifically for private people, for persons who earn minimum wage and below. Although there are some exceptions that if your earnings or your salary is a little more than the minimum wage, you can pay the difference. But automatically, people who are entitled to legal aid under the Legal Aid Act are those whose salary are from the minimum wage and below. Exceeding the minimum wage here has to do with an annual rate. So your salary will not exceed the minimum wage at the average in per annum. Now, the importance of pro bono is that it enables one to have access to justice. Another importance of pro bono is that it also encourages social justice. So under pro bono, you see fights for social justice rights, or for things that have to do with social justice, the common good, public good. So by virtue of pro bono services, people can fight such causes. And the third importance of pro bono is that encourages social responsibility. So in the corporate world, corporate social responsibility (CSR) is a thing, such that many companies are even mandated to provide corporate social responsibility, which aims at helping the society in which the businesses thrive. Now, seeing the importance of pro bono, a very key aspect is how to access pro bono. Looking at this, the first major access to pro bono services is from the Legal Aid Council. And now, the Legal Aid Council provides for both criminal matters and civil matters. However, the civil matters are quite limited, but the criminal matters are majorly the more serious offenses like murder, manslaughter, rape, and even stealing. While for civil matters include enforcement of fundamental human rights, or the more common matters of landlord and tenancy issues or employer and employee issues. Those ones, the Legal Aid Council provides mediation services for all of those. So these are the services that the Legal Aid Council renders with respect to pro bono. So it's not really like it's every single matter that the Legal Aid Council provides services for. In as much as this has been stated, it's also important to note that because of the country and the issues in the country, this Legal Aid Council is overburdened with loads of cases, or opposed to the number of lawyers that are available. but it doesn't detract from the fact that these services are available or provided by the Legal Aid Council. So that is a first point of call if you require pro bono service. It's important to note at this point that currently in Nigeria, law firms are not mandated to provide pro bono services. I'm aware that the different states operate different laws. So what is applicable in one state may not be applicable in another state, unlike in Nigeria where most of these things are applicable around the federation. So this comes to play, especially where lawyers are applying for the revered senior advocate of Nigeria position. And part of the process for the application of the senior advocate of Nigeria position is to show proof of cases that the person has handled pro bono. So in such instances, you see that in Nigeria, people are really encouraged to provide pro bono services. Another institution that provides pro bono services is the LEDAP, that is the Legal Defense and Assistance Project, that was set up particularly to provide pro bono services for prisoners and for victims of human rights violations. And currently, the LEDAP has more than 2,000 lawyers that are attached to the initiative that provide legal services pro bono to prisoners and victims of human rights abuse and violations. Another institution that provides pro bono services is the Human Rights Commission. So the Human Rights Commission was set up by virtue of the Human Rights Commission Act, which was amended in 2010. The act was made pursuant to a decision by the United Nations General Assembly. For the member states were encouraged to set up the human rights commissions that are aimed at checking human rights abuses and violations. Also, we have several NGOs, that is non-governmental organizations, that have been set up in the past to provide pro bono services. We have the Human Rights Law Service, as the name implies. It's set up also to deal with human rights violations. Now, you can see that there are so many institutions set up to provide legal services for human rights violations. And the reason is not far-fetched because, human rights is something that inures to a human being. It's what makes one's human life worth living. Another NGO is the Institute of Human Rights and Humanitarian Law. Third NGO we'll be looking at is the Social and Economic Rights Action Center, SERAC. You can notice that this is a departure from the NGOs that have been set up for human rights. This one is set up for the protection of social and economic rights. And one will ask, what's the difference between human rights and social and economic rights? Well, under the 99 Constitution of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended, it is the constitution that the Federal Republic of Nigeria still uses till date. Under the Constitution, there's a difference between human rights and the social rights. So the social and economic rights are not justiciable. They are not mandated, even though they are encouraged. So that is your rights to water, your rights to amenities, basic amenities, education, your rights to good hospitals, good roads. Those are social and economic rights. So the Social and Economic Rights Action Center, SERAC, was set up particularly as a departure from the traditional and more common human rights agencies. These ones are not set up to deal with social and economic rights, as I've explained. What NGO will be considering is the Women's Rights Advancement and Protection Alternative, WRAPA. So as the name implies, this NGO was set up to advocate for women's rights and protect human rights of women. Now, this NGO protects women, particularly with respect to instances of domestic violence and abuses. So this is a go-to organization or a go-to agency for the protection of women's rights. An important agency that is not an NGO that is also very key in rendering pro bono services is the International Federation of Women Lawyers, which is known as FIDA, FIDA. Now, this is an association. It's not an NGO, but it's an association of women lawyers, as the name implies, to protect women and children. So they are popular for providing pro bono legal services for women and children, particularly in instances of domestic violence, children welfare, and when it has to do with custody of children, when there are issues in the marriage that have to do with separation and the rest of them, or even when there is no marriage but there's a child involved and it has to do with the custody of the child or the welfare of the child. They provide both legal representation in court when the matter has to go to court. They also do a lot of mediations for matters that don't have to go to court. So FIDA is very active in this regard. And in Nigeria, FIDA has offices in all the states of the federation so that they can reach out to people in the different states. So this is one key institution that provides pro bono legal service, but particularly for women and children. It is important to note at this point that most of these organizations and agencies provide these pro bono legal services at little or no costs entirely. So you need to bear in mind that sometimes some amount may be required, but it will be very, very little compared to when you seek out full legal services that are done not pro bono. One can take advantage of all these options when looking for pro bono services. In conclusion, it's just important to know that pro bono legal services are available depending on what the issues are and what services are required. But pro bono services are available. And should you require pro bono services, you can listen to this video again to get all the options of pro bono services that are available. I hope you got some value from this video. If you did, kindly comment in the comment section below. Like and subscribe to the channel for more updates. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.